The year is 2025. The world watches as the United States, under the leadership of President Trump, embarks on a new era of protectionism. On April 3rd, a sweeping wave of tariffs crashed onto the global stage, impacting economies worldwide. These tariffs, a cornerstone of Trump's economic policy, are designed to shield American industries from foreign competition. They represent a significant shift in global trade dynamics, marking a departure from decades of free trade policies. These tariffs are not mere adjustments, they are a bold statement, a declaration that the U.S. is prepared to prioritize its own economic interests, even at the expense of global partnerships. The rates are substantial, with a baseline of 10% on all goods entering the U.S. For some countries, the rates are even higher, designed to reciprocate their own tariff policies. These tariffs signal a move away from globalization. They are a clear message that the U.S. is willing to reshape the global trade landscape. The impact of these tariffs is far-reaching, affecting both developed and developing economies. Countries like China, India, and members of the European Union face significant challenges. These tariffs have ignited a firestorm of debate, with proponents lauding their potential to revitalize American manufacturing and critics warning of a looming trade war. The global economy braces itself for the aftershocks, uncertain of what the future holds in this new age of protectionism. President Trump's decision to impose tariffs stems from a deep-seated belief that the U.S. has been on the losing end of global trade deals for too long. He argues that unfair trade practices have disadvantaged American businesses and workers, leading to job losses and a decline in U.S. manufacturing. The tariffs, according to Trump, are a necessary corrective measure. They are a tool to protect American interests and restore balance to global trade. The Trump administration points to the widening trade deficit as evidence of this imbalance. The U.S. trade deficit with the world reached a staggering $800 billion in 2024. This, according to the administration, is a clear indication that the U.S. is being taken advantage of in the global marketplace. Trump argues that tariffs are a way to force trading partners to the negotiating table. He believes that by increasing the cost of their goods, the U.S. can gain leverage and secure more favorable trade deals. The tariffs are also aimed at encouraging domestic production. By making foreign goods more expensive, Trump hopes to incentivize American companies to produce goods domestically. This, he argues, will lead to job creation and boost the U.S. economy. The tariffs, according to the administration, are a necessary step to protect American jobs and ensure the long-term economic security of the nation. India, a rising economic powerhouse, finds itself squarely in the crosshairs of Trump's trade war. The U.S. has imposed a 26% tariff on Indian goods, a move that has sent shockwaves through the Indian economy. This tariff, described by Trump as a discounted reciprocal tariff, is a direct response to India's 52% tariffs on certain U.S. goods. The impact on India is significant, particularly for its burgeoning IT sector, which relies heavily on exports to the U.S. The Indian IT industry, a global leader in software development and outsourcing, is staring at a period of uncertainty. The tariffs threaten to increase the cost of doing business for Indian IT companies. These companies rely on imported hardware and software, much of which comes from the U.S. The increased cost of these imports could erode profit margins and make Indian IT services less competitive in the global market. The U.S. is the largest market for the Indian IT sector, accounting for over 60% of its exports. The tariffs threaten to disrupt this crucial trade relationship. Indian IT companies may be forced to raise prices for their services, potentially leading to a loss of market share to competitors in other countries. This could have a ripple effect throughout the Indian economy, as the IT sector is a major source of employment and foreign exchange earnings. The impact of Trump's tariffs extends far beyond India's IT sector. Key industries, including electronics, gems and jewelry and textiles, are also feeling the heat. These sectors rely heavily on exports to the U.S., and the tariffs threaten to disrupt their supply chains and reduce demand for their products. This could lead to job losses and slower economic growth in India. The electronics sector, a major driver of India's manufacturing ambitions, is particularly vulnerable. India imports a significant portion of its electronic components from China, which is also subject to heavy U.S. tariffs. This double whammy of tariffs could increase the cost of manufacturing electronics in India, making Indian products less competitive in both domestic and international markets. The gems and jewelry sector, a major employer in India, is also bracing for a slowdown. The US is the largest market for Indian diamonds and jewelry, and the tariffs are expected to dampen demand. This could lead to job losses in the industry, particularly in the diamond cutting and polishing centers of Surat and Mumbai. The textile industry, another major employer, is also concerned about the potential impact of the tariffs on demand for Indian textiles in the US market. Section 5. Short-term pain, long-term gain. The US perspective. The Trump administration argues that while the tariffs may cause some short-term pain, they are necessary for the long-term economic health of the United States. They believe that the tariffs will protect American jobs, reduce the trade deficit, and ultimately lead to a stronger American economy. The administration points to the potential for increased domestic production and a resurgence in American manufacturing as evidence of the long-term benefits of the tariffs. However, not everyone is convinced. Critics argue that the tariffs are a blunt instrument that could backfire, harming American consumers and businesses. They warn that the tariffs could lead to higher prices for consumers, reduce choices, and stifle economic growth. Some economists fear that the tariffs could spark a trade war, with other countries retaliating with their own tariffs on American goods. This, they argue, would harm American exporters and ultimately hurt the U.S. economy. The impact of the tariffs on the U.S. economy is a subject of intense debate. The administration points to early signs of a manufacturing revival, with some companies announcing plans to expand production in the U.S. However, critics argue that these gains are likely to be offset by job losses in other sectors, such as retail and transportation, which rely on imports. The long-term impact of the tariffs on the U.S. economy remains to be seen. Section 6. A world on edge. The specter of trade wars. The imposition of tariffs by the United States has sent shockwaves through the global trading system, raising fears of a trade war. The European Union, China, and other major economies have condemned the tariffs and threatened retaliatory measures. The World Trade Organization has expressed concern that the tariffs violate international trade rules and could lead to a breakdown of the multilateral trading system. The EU, a major trading partner of the US, has threatened to impose tariffs on a range of American goods, including iconic products like Harley-Davidson motorcycles and bourbon whiskey. China, the world's second-largest economy, has also vowed to retaliate with tariffs on American soybeans, automobiles, and other products. These tit-for-tat tariffs threaten to escalate into a full-blown trade war, with potentially devastating consequences for the global economy. A trade war would disrupt global supply chains, increase prices for consumers, and damage economic growth worldwide. It would undermine the rules-based trading system that has underpinned global prosperity for decades. The uncertainty generated by a trade war would discourage investment and innovation, further harming the global economy. Section 7. Navigating the storm. India and U.S. responses. The Indian government has responded to the U.S. tariffs with a mix of diplomacy and defiance. India has challenged the tariffs at the World Trade Organization, arguing that they are discriminatory and violate international trade rules. At the same time, India has imposed retaliatory tariffs on a range of U.S. products including almonds, apples, and motorcycles. These tariffs, while largely symbolic, are a signal that India is willing to stand up to what it perceives as unfair trade practices by the U.S. The Indian government has also been actively seeking to diversify its export markets, reducing its reliance on the U.S. India has been negotiating free trade agreements with other countries, including those in the European Union and Southeast Asia. The government is also encouraging Indian companies to explore new markets for their products and services. The U.S., for its part, has shown some willingness to negotiate with India on trade issues. The two countries have held several rounds of talks aimed at resolving their trade differences. However, progress has been slow, and significant differences remain on key issues. The Trump administration has indicated that it is open to granting India exemptions from some of the tariffs, but only if India agrees to address U.S. concerns about its trade practices. Section 8. A cloud with a silver lining? Potential benefits for India. While the tariffs undoubtedly present challenges for India, they also offer potential opportunities. The tariffs could act as a catalyst for India to accelerate its efforts to boost domestic manufacturing and reduce its reliance on imports. The government has launched several initiatives to promote Make in India. with a focus on sectors like electronics, defense, and pharmaceuticals. The tariffs could also encourage Indian companies to become more competitive and innovative. Facing increased competition from domestic producers, Indian companies may be forced to improve their products, reduce costs, and become more efficient. This could, in the long run, make Indian companies more competitive globally. The tariffs could also lead to greater diversification of India's export markets. As the US market becomes more challenging, Indian companies may be forced to look for new markets for their products and services. This could lead to greater economic engagement with other regions, such as Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Section 9. A World Divided: The Uncertain Future of Global Trade. The trade war initiated by the United States has cast a long shadow over the global economy. The rules-based trading system that has underpinned global prosperity for decades is under threat. The future of global trade remains uncertain, with the potential for further escalation and retaliation. The tariffs have exposed deep divisions within the global trading system. Developing countries in particular feel that the system has not always worked in their favor. They argue that developed countries have often used their economic clout to secure favorable trade deals, while developing countries have been left to bear the brunt of globalization's downsides. The challenge for the global community is to find a way to reform the trading system to make it fairer and more equitable. This will require dialogue, compromise, and a willingness on the part of all countries to work together. The alternative, a descent into protectionism and trade wars, would be disastrous for the global economy.